Welcome to the videos for my core plays for week 2 of the NFL season over on DraftKings. Going to show my favorite cash game and GPP targets on the entire slate. I also have various other videos posted throughout the week, including lineup building videos, final picks, showdown slates, and various things like that. So if you think that's helpful and you're going to stick around for the entire season, might as well hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. And if you want to take that one step further, become an official member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that. You get access to a lot of extra content, including the entire spreadsheet, ownership projections, cheat sheets, Discord community, a bunch of other stuff. Link is down below. And last but not least, this video is sponsored by Prize Picks. I'm sure most of you know this by now, but if you don't, it's daily fantasy sports simplified. Just you versus projections. There's no sharks, 150 max contests, or salary cap restrictions, or anything like that. Just you versus the props that they offer each and every single day. And as of right now, if you sign over on Prize Picks, you can use code CEEDEE to get a free money bonus. That's an instant deposit match up to $100 when you tell them I sent you. I think that'll be it for the plugs for the most part, so without further ado, let's dive into today's video. And starting us off with core play number 1, we have Pittsburgh Steelers rookie running back Najee Harris at only $6,300, and this price feels like an absolute steal. I know he busted last week, didn't even cross 6 fantasy points, but I think he bounces back in a very solid way this weekend versus a very poor run defense and the Las Vegas Raiders, who gave up rushing touchdowns to both Tyson Williams and Latavius Murray last week, and Tyson Williams also added around 70 yards on the ground. The main appeal here for Najee Harris is 1, the price tag, but number 2, he played, I'm sure you guys heard this all week long if you listen to other videos, he played 100% of the snaps in last week's game, all 55 offensive snaps for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I will take the volume all day because that's the most important thing in DFS. Yes, guys can be talented, but if they're not seeing opportunities, it's not really worth that much. But Najee Harris, we know he's a talented running back. The offensive line is obviously not that great, but he gets a good matchup. They allowed over 100 rushing yards per game last year, and they were 4th in points allowed to the running back position. He's a 6.5 point favorite at home. Everything is pointing towards Najee Harris having a bounce back game, so if you can get him cheap and season long, go for it, because I think that's going to expire after this week versus the Raiders. Yes, there is several pivots in this price range to get different in tournaments, but if you're playing cash game, I would just take the free square that DraftKings is giving us this weekend. While he was terrible efficiency-wise last week, only averaging around 2.8 yards per carry, I'm assuming it's going to get bumped up as the season progresses. I'd be very surprised if it's under 3 here versus the Raiders. And his rushing prop over on Prize Picks is at 72.5, which if you think he's going to have 20 plus touches, I'd say there's a decent chance he can hit the over. And moving on to our second core play, we have the Los Angeles Chargers wide receiver Keenan Allen at $7,000, who honestly feels a bit underpriced in this potential game environment and matchup versus the Dallas Cowboys. And this game should be able to pop off. It's going to be a very popular game, but for a good reason, because there's a lot of good players that honestly feel a bit underpriced. Not just Keenan Allen, you might see a couple more later on in this video. But this game features a 54.5 point over-under, a tight 3.5 point spread. The Chargers have a 29 point implied team total, which is one of the highest on the entire slate. And I just cannot get enough of this game, especially Keenan Allen. I feel like he should be closer to $8,000. He had a great week 1 where he had 12 targets, 9 catches, 100 yards versus a very difficult matchup in the Washington football team. Just typical Keenan Allen stuff. Had around 30% target share. Played around 60% of his snaps in the slot. And last season versus wide receivers, the Cowboys allowed the 5th most points per game while being 21st DVA versus the pass. And they had no answer last week. The NFL opener on Thursday night versus Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown. They did stifle Mike Evans a little bit, but Keenan Allen is one of the best pure route runners in football. He's going to get open. He always finds ways to do that. And Justin Herbert looks his way quite often. And if this game does stay close with this 3.5 point spread, it should be an absolute shootout, and Keenan Allen will be a big part of that. Moving on to core play number 3 here, we have Chris Carson at only $6,100 for the Seattle Seahawks, and I feel like this price tag is way too low. Very similar play to Najee Harris in my opinion. Rashad Penny is going to be out for this game, which does open up more of a workload here for Chris Carson. He was busy in week 1, had nearly 20 total opportunities, had a few targets, and 16 carries on the ground. He was pretty efficient too, close to 100 rushing yards with those 16 carries. This game sets up very well for him as a running back at home. 54.5 point over-under, 30 point implied team total, and 6 point favorite. This is basically a dream spot for Chris Carson, the guy that can catch the football. Should get plenty of carries on the ground. He's going to get the work around the goal line, and I think there's going to be a lot of points scored here from the Seattle Seahawks. The Tennessee Titans defense looked like Swiss cheese last week versus the Arizona Cardinals, more so versus the pass compared to the run, but even Chase Edmonds and James Conner weren't exactly terrible last week, and Carson is obviously a more established runner here. Getting back to last season, they were mid-pack DVOA-wise versus the run, but they were 26 versus running backs, allowing nearly a rushing touchdown per game and 100 yards on the ground with a handful of catches. So at this price point, I'm having a hard time not playing Chris Carson in cash games, in addition to Najee Harris, which allows us to spend up a little bit at the wide receiver and quarterback position. And moving on to core play number 4 here, we have another player in the mid-range, which I think is absolutely loaded this week, but it's just getting a nice piece in that Chargers-Cowboys game that I think absolutely pops off. But at CeeDee Lamb at $6,400, a talented second-year wide receiver. You can't go wrong with any wide receiver in this game, really. We have Keenan Allen, Mike Williams on the Chargers side. You even have some other good pass-catching options like Jared Cook, Austin Eckler, running back if you want. Cowboys, you have Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Zeke Elliott, Dalton Schultz, Blake Jarwin, and Cedric Wilson. So you really cannot go wrong with any of them. But if I had to pick one on the Cowboys, I like CeeDEE Lamb the most, $6,400 once you factor in his price point. He's $400 cheaper than Amari Cooper. Yes, Cooper had more targets last week at 17, but I like the price savings we get, and they're basically the same play in my opinion, so why not just take the cheaper guy? And CeeDee Lamb in a second year, I think is going to absolutely ball out. The way the Cowboys play, it seems like they fall behind each and every single week, and they have to play a little bit of catch up, which is awesome for the wide receivers. And since Michael Gallup is now gone, Cedric Wilson is going to fill in his role, but he's not quite as good as Michael Gallup, so we can't expect him to exactly put up Michael Gallup numbers. So I think that just kind of feeds into more the two alpha dog wide receivers, and Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb both combined for nearly 30 targets last weekend, as they both combined for like 30 targets last week, and I would not be surprised if that happens once again, maybe even more depending on how the game script goes here. But CeeDee Lamb should be able to absolutely feast. It's a high-paced, high-flying offense, and I don't think it's unrealistic to expect Dak Prescott to throw the ball over 40 times once again. He averaged 45 pass attempts per game last year, was well over that in week 1. We'll probably see it again, to be honest. And while CeeDee Lamb did have some bad drops last week, he had a really nice touchdown catch, and he made some other really strong plays. Assuming those drops don't keep happening throughout the entire season, CeeDee Lamb's going to be a guy that you can trust, and the price is more than likely only going up as the season progresses. Then shifting over to more of a GPP focus here, I love the passing attack on both sides of this game with Seattle and Tennessee. This game features a very high over-under. We talked about that with Chris Carson. But I'm assuming Chris Carson is going to be one of the highest owned players in the entire slate. When people roster running backs, tend to shy away from the wide receivers in that game because they want it to be a running game. Well, this is a fantastic matchup for the Seattle passing attack. Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett are all in very elite spots. They just got destroyed. This Tennessee Titans defense destroyed by Kyler Murray last week. 4 touchdowns, close to 300 yards. Andre Hopkins had a very good game, so did Christian Kirk. And Metcalf and Lockett are one of the best duos in the entire NFL. DK Metcalf is a freak of nature, and Tyler Lockett, very shifty. He's able to get open and can be a deep threat. He got a really nice long touchdown versus the Indianapolis Colts last week, and it's a very soft matchup. The Titans actually allowed the second most points per game to wide receivers last season. Both DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett got into the end zone last week, and both had very productive games. Russell Wilson was very, very good. Had 4 touchdowns. I definitely love the upside here. And if you're going for a very expensive game stack, you can run him back with A.J. Brown. I don't think it's an absolute necessity, but I love that price point a lot at $6,900. He got into the end zone last week, and this is a very good matchup versus Seattle, as they allowed the 4th most points per game to wide receivers, and he's definitely the guy you want over Julio Jones. Them being 6-point dogs, they should have to throw the ball more than they'd like to, so they won't be able to rely on Derrick Henry as much, at least what I'm assuming. And plus, the Seahawks are a bit of a pass funnel defense anyway. Moving on to our final core play, another GPP target, but it's Chase Edmonds at $4,900, the starting running back for the Arizona Cardinals. No, he's not going to see 100% of the snaps of guys like Najee Harris, but he did see 60% of the snaps last week, and he's the pass-catching running back here. James Conner will be involved, saw around half the snaps last week, out-rushed. Edmonds is going to be right there with him in terms of rushing attempts, plus he's going to get the passing down work, which makes him way more valuable for DFS purposes. The thing I really love about Edmonds now is the later the week goes on, he was my tournament running back anyway for a cheap option, but now that Kenyon Drake is going to be the starting running back for the Las Vegas Raiders with Josh Jacobs being out, that's going to cut Chase Edmonds' ownership in half. So I will take that all day. Should be very low owned. This is a good spot versus Minnesota. I have not talked much about this Arizona-Minnesota game this week, even though it's got over a 50-point over-under, but they're pretty tight spread. I could see this game popping off quite easily. And I actually think the entire game is going to go pretty low owned. We're just trying to get some cheap exposure to it because a lot of these guys are quite expensive, which I think is the reason it's getting a bit overlooked. Plus, there's also some other really good games on this slate. But last season versus the run, Minnesota was 30th DVOA, and they were 27th versus running backs, like over 100 rushing yards per game and over rushing touchdown. Should see around 15 to 20 total touches for him, which I would take all day at $4,900, especially with the reduced ownership, the news that Josh Jacobs is being out and Kenyon Drake being the same exact price tag. With that being said, I think that'll be pretty much it for the video. So I hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, become an official member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that. I also have various other videos posted throughout the week if you want to check them out if you did enjoy this content. And if you want to join the Patreon, get access to a lot of extra content, link is down below in the description for that. And don't forget, this video was sponsored by Prize Picks, just you versus projections. And as of right now, if you're new signing over there, you can get a free money bonus up to $100 when you use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. I think that'll be pretty much it. I will stop rambling. I wish you guys the best of luck on Sunday for week 2.